the start.
Thanks. I so move, Leslie Hirlich.
8 minutes, Deputy.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank the Ceann Comhairle and put it on the record, because there was a great danger that this debate may have gone ahead without any of the independent TDs who don't belong to the technical group not having a voice. That would have been a travesty of Parliament. So thank you, Ceann Comhairle. I appreciate it, because it was with a reluctance that the government conceded that yesterday. This is an extremely important landmark for this country, and it should be done. It should be done honestly and openly and transparently, and setting aside politics. And the reason is that since 2009, when the crisis exploded into the destruction that was left, 250,000 people have emigrated, 250,000. 385,000 remain on the live register of unemployed. That's a total of 635,000 people, which is 9 Croke Park full, or 16 Aviva Stadium full. Move on to the people in mortgage arrears, the families in mortgage arrears, 140,000. That's about 500,000 people at 2.7 people per household. And add on 90,000 on the housing waiting lists. And now we're beginning to get some sort of feel for the hurt, distress and financial destruction that followed from the collapse in 2008. Now, the Taoiseach said in his contribution that we want to have the origins fully understood. Well, actually, that is quite easy and straightforward to do, but it's been avoided so far. All you need is to look at the balance sheets of all the licensed deposit-taking banking and building society institutions, look at their balance sheets starting in 2001 through to 2008 at 6 monthly intervals, and you will see the evidence. It's facts. It's not opinions. It's not like a painter or an artist or a sculptor giving their interpretation of things. They're cold facts. Those balance sheets show that the greatest credit pyramid in the history of Europe was building up in Ireland. Iceland had it, a little island, at 10 times smaller than us, but we had it. And the evidence is there, because, as I said, the balance sheets, if you end the picture with the collapse in 2008 and the bank guarantee, which will be another thing to examine and inquire about, but the boards of directors have prudential responsibility of the institutions of which they are the directors and the stewards, to make sure that the balance sheet management of the assets that they create from the deposits that they take are properly managed, prudentially. That loans to deposits ratios, which is the fractional reserving principle, are adhered to. And again, the balance sheets, all we have to do is bring in the boards of directors from between 2001 and 2008, sit them down, and behind them, their auditors. Present the balance sheets and ask them to make their observations on the history, the journey from 2001 to 2008. Because you can't have a credit bubble which supports an asset price bubble unless there's a pyramid building up. Take, for example, Bank of Ireland's balance sheet at 2008. It had loans to customers' deposits ratio of 158%. Instead of 90%. In addition, it had senior secured bond funding on its balance sheet of 61 billion. Yeah, 40% of the Irish national income. That's crazy stuff. So I'm not going to go into further details, but you can see how simple it is if you actually know the questions to ask. And they've been there, but nobody wanted to hear those questions. And being left off a committee back in July of last year, you don't get a chance to even make a contribution. You sit in there listening to other people and witnesses talking about different things, whether it's Patrick Honan, the central bank, or boards of or managements from the banks, and you can't ask questions because the whips and the government say you can't, you're off the committee. And it is absurd. I want to thank the various members from the other parties and from the technical group for supporting the amendment to include me. Because I did write to the Taoiseach. I wrote to the Ceann Comhairle as chair of the CPP committee in January, saying that I would very much like to serve. This is a matter of service for the people. It's not politics. In some ways, I'm glad that I'm no longer in the party, that I can do this on the face of it, totally objectively, help in asking the right questions during the course of the inquiry. There is then the next stage, which is how the bank guarantee came about and the consequences of that. And as Deputy Shortwell said, what sort of pressures were put on the last government and so on. But, you know, even in the PCARs, the Prudential Capital Assessment Reviews, we need to actually inquire about that too. Because I remember at the time of March 2010, and by the way, I'll give you a little anecdotal thing. In July and August of 2009, before Governor Honan became was appointed the governor of the central bank, I was in his offices in Trinity, showing him the analysis of the up-to-date balance sheets of the 6 Irish banks, owned banks, and that there was an impossibility that the figures produced by the experts in the listing for the NAMA transfers and the loan losses that would be associated with them, there was no chance that those figures that were given by the so-called experts would be correct. No chance. But it was again dismissed. And in March 2010, when Mr. Elderfield, who's left also, it's funny how many people have left after only completing less than half the terms of their offices in the central bank or in the regulator's office. He sort of said, we've got the models from BlackRock, Boston and Barclays that show that our capital assessment requirements are accurate. And I said, no, if you look at the balance sheets here and remember that 200 billion of extra turbocharged lending was done in less than 4 years by 6 Irish banks, there's no possibility that when everything stops, that more than half of that will be collected. And that was the true indicator of the scale of the losses. But it was dismissed. So we do need to just be objective. My training, luckily, is auditing. I can be objective. The facts speak for themselves. The bits of the jigsaw are in the box. It's a matter of placing them out there and getting all the directors of all the institutions to show us, whether individually or collectively, they understood what they were doing. Because too many people, over 1.5 million Irish people at the moment, are distressed as a result of the consequences, and they need to hear it. They haven't the time to read reports by Reckling, Watson Reckling, or Honohan, or Nyberg. They need to see it visibly, the people who had that responsibility, that fiduciary responsibility. So I would ask that the motions be supported.
Thank you, Deputy.
In the interests of the people of Ireland. We're here to serve them. In fact, I think we should take off all our political clothing for the purpose of this inquiry and do it professionally, honestly and well.
Thank you, Deputy.
It can be done and it should be done.
To at least set this on the right footing, maybe consider before the motion is voted on. One is to add an 8th member, a non-government senator or TD, to deal with the government majority. The government majority, rightly or wrongly, has a lot of people thinking this is a setup because they can outvote the non-government TDs and senators on the issue. So an idea, maybe add one non-government person, which de facto gets rid of any lack of trust.
Will be supporting, and our party will be supporting the motion before us as well, that Deputy Peter Mathews would be included on the inquiry team by virtue of the very specific skill set and experience that he has in relation to banking matters. Embarking on an inquiry such as this without somebody like Deputy Mathews is akin to starting a match with your best player on the subs bench. We need to ensure that we have the right people and the best people taking part in this inquiry from the very outset, last Ciaran Corla.
Is Deputy Peter Mathews, who also has a major contribution to make to this issue, and he should be included in this inquiry. And any parliament that excludes people who have a special knowledge, a special skill and special interest into the whole issue of the banking crisis and the financial services, that doesn't include people like Deputy Peter Mathews, is making a major mistake. And it's not an inclusive democratic parliament if you exclude people like that. But particularly, And right across party, there would be acknowledgement that Deputy Peter Mathews has made a major contribution to the debate on the banking crisis and the financial crisis. And he should be, and at this late stage, Minister, I would appeal to you and the Taoiseach to include him, to add an extra place so that you can get on and do the job as well.
No, but I do, and I will support, and my party will support the nomination of Peter Mathews to be added to the inquiry committee, the committee of inquiry. And I believe that if the government actually engaged with us at the very start in terms of the numbers of the inquiry, that we wouldn't be in a situation where we've got a motion that just lands on the order paper. I will also support the motion that actually calls for the bankers to come before the inquiry and account for their practices. Who wouldn't? I think it's obvious that we're going to do that. But I actually do think, with respect to the deputies who put their name to this motion, I think it's playing politics with an issue that's so serious. Like, if we're to allow the committee to define the terms of reference, then let the committee define the terms of reference. If this is the only term of reference that we're going to actually agree here tonight, then that just makes a mockery of the inquiry from the very start. But of course, on the matter that Deputy Mathews has brought forward, of course I would support that at the committee, so therefore I will, and my party will support it here.